Morning everybody, welcome to Talk Tuesday today, and I will remember to use my chime even at the start. There we go. That was quite appropriate, wasn't it, saying the wrong word when I'm talking about making mistakes today? But that is the topic, so making mistakes. And the reason that I wanted to talk about this is because, as always, it's one of those things that crops up a lot recently. I very often hear people talking about not wanting to do something new, to try something because they think they're going to fail. And really it is just the fear of making a mistake. But the problem with doing that is that you are then limiting your life. You know, you're sticking in your little lane without trying out all of these other things that you could try out that might be absolutely wonderful for, you know, just out of fear of not getting it right first time. But nobody does get anything right first time, or if they do, you know, it's pretty much a miracle. And, you know, humans aren't meant to get things right the first time. We're meant to make mistakes because that is how we learn and that's how we grow, as I've said many a time in different contexts. So if you think about a baby, when they learn to walk, you know, they never just get up and start walking. They'll get up and fall down. You know, well, they crawl to start with anyway, and then they start hauling themselves up on furniture and whatever's around them so that they can get up on their feet and then move along it with their hands to keep them balanced until they can actually learn how to hold themselves upright and as they're walking. And that's all an essential part of learning, and it helps our brains to adjust and to create new neural pathways to retain that learning so that we don't make those early mistakes again. And it's the same when you're a bit older and you learn to ride a bike. You know, again, it's very, very rare for anybody just to get on a bike and go away with it, super balanced starting off. Same with surfing, you know. I started, well, I had my first surf lesson last year and inevitably spent a lot of time falling off, but you know, that's just part of the fun of it. You know, you have to make these so-called mistakes in order to learn. And if we didn't make those so-called mistakes, and I'm calling them so-called for a reason which I'll come to, then we wouldn't learn and we wouldn't grow, and it is so important to do that. It actually makes me sad when I hear particularly a lot of youngsters saying that they're not going to try something because they don't know how to do it, and you know, oh, I couldn't do that. And I think, well, I know social media gets blamed for a lot of things, but I do think that has an influence because I see it more in the younger generation now than I think it used to be when I was young, that people are more afraid of failing and therefore don't try something new because they're constantly presented with this sort of idealized image on social media or TV or wherever of people, you know, looking perfect, whatever you call perfect, and being able to do things perfectly. Well, people don't normally bother showing the stages that it took to get there. They just show you the finished article, and I think it is really sad that people just often are too scared to take that learning step in order to get them to where they could be, for fear of making mistakes. And one thing I heard recently, it was on the podcast, I believe it was on the podcast, the Jim Fortin podcast. I'm guessing it's likely to be that one because I listen to that one a lot at the moment. And he said that people don't like perfect people. And it's true. You know, we bond better with people if we see them making mistakes because we know that we make mistakes. And we all know, really, that making mistakes is just to be human. So, you know, people don't want perfection. People like to see people having a go and, you know, maybe not getting things totally right the first time or the 10th time or the 100th time. Well, it doesn't matter. You know, I've talked again before about businesses that wouldn't have been the success that they are now had the people behind them not made mistakes and had so-called failures beforehand. You know, There are loads of people, any kind of really big entrepreneur, somebody like Richard Branson, who has had failed businesses in the past. That's what makes him go on to be the amazing business person he is today, because he's learned those lessons. And really, that's all mistakes are. And that's why at the beginning I was calling them so-called mistakes. I actually think it's a shame that we use that word, because that has connotations of something being wrong. And actually, the steps that we take along our journey, which may be seen as mistakes along the way, I prefer to think of them as steps, as maybe a rite of passage, but not something wrong. So I wish there was a better word than mistake or failure, but they are vital steps on our journey. Because if you think about a ladder, I meant to bring a picture of one, but I forgot. You know, you start at the bottom rung, and then, you know, you're climbing a long way to the top. Well, each rung of the ladder, there might be something along the way that hasn't gone as you want it to. You might term it a mistake, you might term it a failure, but if you term it a lesson, then, you know, you see it more clearly as another rung on the ladder. If I do it with my fingers, you know, it's like, well, using the learning to walk analogy that I started with, you know, a baby tries to get up because it copies the adults around it, falls back to the floor, and so, you know, that didn't work, and then it'll try it again another time, and then so that's that rung. And then that step up is when they learn that if they grab hold of the furniture around them, they can pull themselves up to standing and stay standing. I mean, they might wobble a bit, but do you see what I mean? It's that next step on the journey. And then the next step is when they get the courage to, you know, they're clinging onto the sofa, and then there's a chair nearby, and then they launch themselves at the chair where they can cling on again. And that's that next step on the journey, until they get to the top, which is where they actually manage to walk across the room without clinging onto anything. And that's it, they're away, they're walking. But they're very clear steps on that journey. And everything we do in life is a journey that has steps along the way. We don't just go straight to the top. If you think about the snakes and ladders game, you know, that's another good analogy, because, you know, you think you're doing really well, you're going up all of these ladders, and then all of a sudden you hit a snake and you're right back down, maybe to the beginning, or if not, then part way until you start climbing ladders again. That's what life is like, making those mistakes, learning those lessons along the way. And nobody thinks the less of us for doing that, because we're all in it together. Everybody has the same journey. We all have learning steps along our way. And so, as I say, I think it's a great idea just to reframe them and not to think of them as mistakes, but as lessons or steps, whatever word or analogy works for you. It is just, or a rung of a ladder, it is just that step on your journey. And those are essential. And if we don't put ourselves out there and get out of our comfort zone and try those new things, we won't learn those lessons that we need to learn in order to proceed higher up our journey along our pathway. If you think back, I wish I could have thought of a good example in my own life, and I couldn't this morning, but basically the lessons that, the best lessons we learn often are those that have come from something that hasn't gone as well as we wanted it to. And the reason is that we remember what didn't go right, and it kind of embeds it in our brain that we don't do that in future. Again, going back to childhood, it's a bit like if you put your hand, you know, on something hot, like, I don't know, a cooker hob or something. You learn quickly that it's hot and it hurts, and you take your hand away and you don't do it again because you've learned that lesson. So it's really important to make those to have those lessons along the way, to accept when things don't go the way that you maybe hoped they would. But when that happens, celebrate it as a learning, something that you have absorbed along your journey, which will help you in the future. So I just want to leave you with this thought. I came across a quote, which is apparently by Einstein, who said, "You never fail until you stop trying." So in other words, you just need to keep doing stuff and make those so-called mistakes, have those so-called failures, because those are just steps on your journey and you are doing the right thing by keeping on going. So you never fail until you stop trying. So that's it about making mistakes. The only other thing I wanted to say today is for those of you who don't get my newsletter, you won't know about my launch party for this lovely studio that I am sitting in. So if you're in the North Devon area and you can come along and join me, I would love to see you here on Saturday the 20th of April. I'm having a little launch party for the studio at 2:30 through till 5 o'clock, and we'll just be having some drinks and some nibbles, and you'll get the chance to enter some competitions for free Reiki session and a free VIP retreat day. So that would definitely be worth coming along for. And I would love to see you just to celebrate the opening of this studio. As you know, if you've been here, it has been operational for a few months now, since the start of this year, but we've still been tweaking certain things in here, so it hasn't been fully ready, and unfortunately the landscaping is still not likely to be completely ready by the launch party, because the weather's been too atrocious to be able to do anything with the bog garden outside as it's become. It's not meant to be a bog garden. Anyway, I digress. I just wanted to say that anybody who can come along on the 20th of April, please do. I would love to see you here. So thanks as always for watching this video. I will be back here again next Tuesday. Have a great day and a great week. Cheers. Bye-bye.